I'm Justin Mott, and welcome to my home in Hanoi, Vietnam. And if you're new here, my channel is dedicated to all things photography from the perspective of a full-time working professional photographer. So, you don't know me. You think you know me. Well, maybe you know that I like camera bags and I'm into Leica gear, and that I live in Vietnam, and that I'm ruggedly handsome somehow, and that I can pull off a cardigan and still look cool. Yeah, those are obvious. But what don't you know about me? Well, great question. And I'm glad you're here to explore that. Because today I'm going to talk about 3 things that you don't know about me. Let's have some fun with it. Let's get into it. And let's talk photography. Alright, just a quick update on things, guys. Don't forget to check out my online store at justinmott.com, where I've got presets like this one that will not make you a better photographer, but they will add some pop to your images. I've also got a variety of online classes for one-on-one learning open to all levels of photographers interested in all genres of photography. I've also got prints for sale that make great gifts, that make great wall art. Check that out. And lastly, guys, don't forget about my Northern Vietnam photography workshop. I've got a few slots left. It's going to be an epic travel and street photography workshop taking place this March here in Hanoi and in the northern mountains of Sapa. It's going to be an epic trip. Sign up now, a few slots left. Everything, all the details about that are in the description box below. So let's have some fun today. Let's talk about 3 things that you absolutely don't know about me. So the first one I'm going to talk about here today is that I once spent time in solitary confinement in an active federal prison. Okay, this one might be a little bit of clickbait because I wasn't actually there serving time. I was there on my own free will, but it was an active prison. There was prisoners very close to me. There was prisoners shouting at me, and I did have a blade in my hand, so you're still thinking like, what the heck are you talking about? Well, I was actually there working for a tinting company. I was right out of high school. I couldn't afford to go to college on my own, so I worked for a tinting company in the northeast of the US. And while we did do a lot of like luxury homes, tinting huge giant windows to block out the sun and also to block UV light to preserve furniture and expensive paintings and artwork and things like that, we also did a lot of commercial tinting for buildings and things like this. We tinted at the federal prison. It wasn't actually tint, it was blackout film, so a very thick film went on the plexiglass windows, and it was put there so that the guards could still look in and watch the prisoners while they shower to make sure there was no foul play going on in there, but at the same time they wanted it so like female guards didn't have to look up to a certain point, if you kind of get what I mean. And the warden was really interested and wanted to give me the full tour because, you know, he thought like, oh, well, they're going to love you. Because when I was like 19, 20 years old, I looked like I was like 16, like, oh my God, they're really going to give you. He was really teasing me a lot that day. Gave me the whole tour of the prison, showed me solitary confinement. My job was actually to clean the windows, so I had to have a little blade with me to wipe the windows and cut the tint, things like that. So it was kind of interesting to have all this equipment and be that close. And the prisoners were talking a lot of crap to me. They were yelling at me, and the warden was like, well, listen, they're gonna be yelling at you and screaming at you because you're taking away like a privilege from them. So basically don't talk back. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I'm not going to start a prison riot, especially when I was like 19 years old. Probably not at 44 years old either. I'm not going to start a prison riot. But it was an interesting experience, and it was something I thought maybe you probably didn't know about me. And number 2 on my list will come as a surprise, but there is a caveat to this one. I have in my life actually drank rhino horn and eaten tiger bones. And a lot of you are going to be like, oh, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? Like, did you do it as an experiment? Like, I thought you were like a wildlife person, especially rhinos. I mean, I have a rhino tattoo on my hand and a rhino tattoo on my shoulder. Like, how could I possibly do this? That's so vile. It's so disgusting. And yes, it was, and I hated that I had to do it, but my thoughts at the time were the good outweighed the bad. I was actually going undercover on 2 separate occasions for Time Magazine and another time for the United Nations, posing as a potential buyer of rhino horn to film these sellers and document it for a documentary they're working on, and then taking photos for a story for Time Magazine about the rhino horn industry. So it was disgusting to do it. The people that were in this trade were disgusting. I was undercover. These guys were criminals. I was at a black market mafia dealer's house here in Vietnam, and yeah, like I had to pretend that I was interested in buying it. So if they're going to give me a sample of something that costs that much, I had to drink it, grind up the horn into like a milky substance, almost like tastes like a milky water, and you just drink it, and it doesn't do anything, and I didn't feel anything, and it's just basically fingernails, but people are idiots and do things like this. People think it cures cancer, they think it helps virility, all sorts of crazy beliefs on this in traditional medicine, and none of them are actually true. That's the first time I came in contact with rhino horn, actually, was drinking it rather than like about 10 years later, was actually documenting rhinos and doing that story. And for those of you out there that follow me closely, I thought you might find that story kind of surprising, just because you know how passionate I am about the northern white rhinos, you know how passionate I am about wildlife and wildlife preservation and conservation, and so I just thought that would be interesting to tell that story. But again, not proud of it. It was something I had to really think deeply about. If the situation came up, would I do it? And it did come up, and I did do it, and I did think that the good outweighed the bad in that situation, so that's what I did, and I'd probably do it again as well if I had to do the story all over again. And number 3 on my list, and the last one for today, this one's a little more fun, is one time the current Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, actually called my cell phone when I was living in San Francisco to thank me. And I didn't answer the phone call because I was too busy having a beer in a crowded bar to answer it. I just got a voice message. And you're going to say, why would she call me to thank me? Well, she wasn't the vice president at the time. This was a long time ago. But she was the district attorney of San Francisco. And I was living in San Francisco, and I was coming back from my ex-girlfriend's apartment. It was early in the morning. And I was at the bus station, and I was sitting there and waiting for the bus. And just before I was about to get on the bus, I see a guy wheeling a motorcycle down the street. And he looked rather suspicious. I mean, he was really suspicious. Not a good criminal, by the way. I could give this guy some advice. Not that I'm a good criminal or I know anything about being a criminal, but it was just like, he was kind of horrible. It was like straight out of like a bad movie. He was wheeling the motorcycle on the sidewalk, kind of looking both ways, and then he crouched down, he did something to the bike, and he hot-wired it. He got the bike started, but as this was all going on, I could tell he was doing something like really shady before he even started hot wires. So I called 911, got on the phone with the police department, and I was like, listen, I'm on the corner of these two streets, I'm at the bus station, and I think this guy's stealing a motorcycle right now. You might want to check it out. And a couple minutes later, as like my bus was pulling up, it was honestly like straight out of a movie. Like as my bus was pulling up, I'm watching this happen. The guy gets the bike started, he hot wires the bike, he gets it started, he puts one leg over and 2 cop cars converge on him. And as they converge on him, he just shoots right between the two of them, full throttle on the motorcycle, goes across Lombard Street through a red light, which a lot of you that if you live in San Francisco, you know that's one of the busiest streets there. He shoots across it, fires up the road, and I'm just like, oh my God, that just happened. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought like, wow, he got away. I didn't know what to make of it. So I got on the bus. A couple minutes later, police department calls my phone. They're like, hey, we caught the guy. We need you to identify him. I'm like, well, I'm on the bus. Like, all right, well, what line are you at? What street are you at? So I told them where I was at in the bus, and they sent a cop car. So I basically got off at the next stop. It was kind of funny because everyone on the bus sees me get off at the next stop, and I got into the back of a cop car. And they pulled me up a couple blocks away, and they're like, listen, we have the guy down there, and he doesn't know, so I just need you to identify, is that the guy? And they pull him out of the car, and I'm like, they roll my window down. I'm in the back of the cop car. I'm like, yeah, that's him. That's the guy that stole the motorcycle. Because they didn't actually catch him on the motorcycle, so they needed proof of that. They caught him basically like running away from it. So they didn't have the exact proof of him, but it was like pretty obvious. But they just needed that extra confirmation. I gave them that. The police department thanked me. I went and filed a full report. It was kind of a mess. It was like a few hours of doing all these reports and stuff like that. But the police department was nice and everything. And I don't believe in theft. I don't believe in people stealing other people's property. So I was happy to do it. I'll say happy to do it, but I felt like it's my civic duty to do it. So I did it. And yeah, later that night I was out drinking beers, and I got a message from Kamala Harris and just thanking me on the phone for basically for being a good civilian. And I was like, oh, cool. I missed it because I was having beers with my friends. I was a little bit buzzed. I'm glad I didn't pick up because I was probably pretty buzzed at the time. Anyway, I feel closer to you guys already. I hope you guys like those stories. Just thought I'd mix it up a little bit and have some fun with this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think was the most surprising of those stories. Was it that I drank Rhino horn? Was it that I spent time in a federal prison, even though I didn't really spend time like you think in a federal prison? Or was the most surprising that the Vice President of the United States called me to thank me and I was too busy to pick up the phone? Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, guys, don't forget to check out my online store at justinmott.com, where I've got presets, I've got one-on-one classes, and I've got prints for sale that make great gifts and great artwork for your walls. And lastly, guys, don't forget there's a few slots left for my Northern Vietnam Photography Workshop. Check all that out at justinmott.com, or just check out the links in the description box below. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to have a wonderful day.